This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warnshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, and this is our Game 3 NBA Finals post-game wrap-up. The Miami Heat pull off the uncanny win by defeating the Los Angeles Lakers 115 to 104. And what more can be said, Shaw? But the Miami Heat figured out a way to get it done.
Man, what a serious gut check, gutty, just grimy win for the Miami Heat, and all led by Jimmy Butler playing immense minutes to get his team a victory without Dragic, without Bam Adebayo. We said, and I've said personally, that I didn't know if Butler could be a 40 or 50 point type of guy, but he proved it tonight. And the biggest part for me is this: he did all this without even attempting a three, a parade to the free throw line with 40 points with not even 1-3 mixed into this. Just amazing stuff from Jimmy Butler to lead the Miami Heat to victory this evening.
Well, I think two things really stood out to me about the Miami Heat pulling off this victory. Number one, they became an aggressive basketball team, something that I think from time to time gets taken away from a team who shoots the three ball as much as the Miami Heat did coming back into this NBA playoffs. But the other thing that really stands out to me is the Miami Heat's consistent effort and hustle from wire to wire. Even when the Los Angeles Lakers made their runs, in which they did, the Miami Heat still out-hustled the Los Angeles Lakers. And I think those are two very important things to keep in mind, because that is the kind of intensity the Miami Heat is going to need, not just to get themselves to tie this series, but to give themselves even a chance to win out for the rest of this series. They have to recognize that when they push the Lakers on their heels, that they give themselves chances to get quality shots. And we saw that in this game, specifically, not just by Jimmy Butler, but by everybody up and down the roster, because even with that type of performance that Jimmy Butler had, the contributions that he got from Duncan Robinson, from Kelly Olynyk, from even Myers Leonard, who was only there for 7 minutes, but it was the heart, the hustle, and the effort that I think really stood out. Like, they weren't shell-shocked when the Lakers started going on those 10-0 runs that completely blindsided them in the second and third quarters that we've been talking about in the first two games, that pretty much gave them no shot in the second half to even come back and win this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you saw from Miami was just a great mix of leadership from Jimmy Butler, but maybe even more importantly, the way that they were committed to their defense on the other side of the basketball, and obviously getting Anthony Davis in foul trouble early and not allowing him to catch any type of rhythm was massive for the Heat to be able to kind of stay away from Laker runs or extended Laker runs, especially because Davis, while he still got, I think it was 15 points, he just never really had a rhythm in this game, and he didn't commit another foul after the third quarter, early on in that third. But again, he just was never really into this game, and they mixed up their zone coverage, mixed it in with man, and they weren't amazing, I think, in the man, but in the zone, they really found a way, and the Lakers kind of let them off the hook as well too. They didn't attack the middle in the same way they did, especially in game two. And maybe that was a sort of Davis not being out there. And it's a weird game because you look at statistically, the Lakers still beat Miami in free throw shooting attempts. They got to the line 29 times. They had 38 points from Kuzma and Markieff Morris off the bench, which would ordinarily spell an off night from Anthony Davis, and it just didn't matter. Miami's just will and determination, and their ability to turn LeBron over and Anthony Davis over combined 13 times in this game really set the tone for how the rest of the series can potentially go. Jimmy Butler thinks they found something, and we'll have to see if that actually comes true, especially if Bam and Dragic are able to come back in game 4.
Well, I'm going to throw out some statistics your way, Shaw, that I do think may help, other than just saying that the Miami Heat showed effort, heart, and hustle. First of all, the Miami Heat won the points in the paint, 48-34. I cannot tell you how important that is for a team that only shot 35% from three, because what that told me was when their three-point shot wasn't working, they could get into the paint. And even while everybody is in awe and shock about Anthony Davis, LeBron James, who, play like they're 7'3" and lock down the paint area, and you've got physical guys like Dwight Howard playing in the painted area, The Miami Heat proved that they can get shots in the paint. It's just a willingness to want to do it. And the fact that we started seeing Duncan Robinson cutting to the basket and creating. If he wasn't going to be able to shoot the three, he had to at least show the intent that he is willing to take the ball, dribble down, and get into that painted area and either create a shot, take a shot, or kick it out to someone else to shoot that ball, so that the Lakers are just not camping out, stopping the Heat from getting those 3-point shots that they were getting at ease prior to that situation. I think opened up the floodgates. I even tweeted this thing out, man. It was a freaking ocean out there for the Miami Heat once they got past the Lakers 3-point line defense. So to me, the aggressiveness, and that's what I'm talking about when it comes to aggressiveness, that the Heat are willing to go in there and get those 2 points in, below the three. They weren't relying on the three. They didn't have to shoot threes all night long. Even if they felt like they were down, they still got points. And because of the physicality that they were playing, they got to the free throw line. And that is part of the ways that the Miami Heat can get easy points against the Los Angeles Lakers throughout the rest of this series.
Well, I mean, if Butler's going to attack in that way, I mean, it's primarily him. You know what I mean?
Right. But
14 of their 23 free throws comes from him. So
right, but it was contagious though, right? Like, because when did we even see that from Duncan Robinson? Even Tyler Hero. Tyler Hero was settling for 3-point shots, but he was taking it aggressively. And in the fourth quarter, when the Lakers were still within striking distance, I think maybe down by they cut the 9-point lead down to 7, and then with about a little more than a minute or so, that key inbound pass by Tyler Hero. Usually Hero will come up past the half court, and he'll dribble down and dribble back. And Rondo was expecting that. So Rondo tries to get aggressive to go after the steal. Hero is going full steam to the basket. And to me, that is an attribute of recognizing that the Lakers are leaving that space available for them. And if you're Hero and you're the point guard, you've got to go in there and you've got to draw the Lakers into either foul or allow the Heat more space for them to pass the ball out and still take control. So to me, things like that is what I liked seeing in this game that I wasn't seeing from them in the first 2 games.
Well, I mean, part of that too is not having Anthony Davis being able to just camp down low.
Right.
If that's Bam, as great as he is, well, Bam's at least free throw line or down into the paint somewhere. Olynyk is camping out by the 3-point line where Davis has to respect him and be out there. So that is going to open up the driving lanes for Hero and Butler when those things are coming out there. So I think that is something that's great for if you're the Miami Heat and Spoelstra. You may have a couple of different ways you can play this now, especially if you get Anthony Davis in foul trouble again, but more importantly, to be able to try to create the space and keep Davis honest and not being able to camp out. And we didn't see a special effort from LeBron defensively tonight. I think it's a switching league, and I understand that. But there were times where he was guarding Jimmy Butler on the initial action, but then a weak screen would come from Miami. He'd just switch it, and it would be KCP.
Butler was eating up KCP all night long.
And I think at some point, like with that, especially if you see a guy's got it going, and not only does he have it going, he has it going in a particular way. He's going to the basket. He's not shooting threes. He is going to the rim. At best, he might pull up on his drive and do a spin move.
Shaw, I personally think that Jimmy Butler, Eric Spoelstra, and the rest of the Heat coaches watched the tape, and they watched I don't want to use the word intrepidation to make it seem like Butler was scared. What I'm saying is that Butler probably, after re-looking at the tape and revisiting what happened in game 2, realized that he left points on the floor. And he wasn't about to do that regardless of who was basically switching on him, but he would have preferred that those switches be winding up with KCP. And it just so happens that maybe he relented on the idea saying, okay, if I've got to square up against LeBron, here is how I will attack him. But because LeBron, and to your point, in whatever mode he was thinking from a defensive perspective, not taking the onus to take Butler, and not taking the switch, Butler is like, all right, I'm ready to eat. I got my lunch pail ready. You know what I'm saying? I got the microwave up. We cooking. You know what I'm saying? So to me is a different side of Butler that I don't think we had an opportunity to have seen so far, because it's never been at this magnitude. We're talking about the NBA Finals, but it's that kind of strategy that the Miami Heat are going to need. Even if they get back Adebayo or they get back Dragic, they have to plan that they need to be one step ahead of whatever the Lakers are going to try and throw out them come game 4.
Yeah, I'm not going to bear the lead there. He was just super aggressive. He answered the call, and now you got to wonder, all right, can you do that again? I mean, we saw this level. I think it was in Game 1 versus the Bucks where we saw Jimmy Butler be this type of aggressive, especially, but really kind of waited until the fourth quarter to get. But
do you think, but Shaw, let me ask you this question: do you think that what we're saying here, or what maybe even to your point, do you think that he needs to be this same way? What if this is the trigger that gets Tyler Hero going, or gets Duncan Robinson going, because the attention now is on what Butler has shown us that he is capable of doing? To me, the Miami Heat have been successful when it hasn't had to be Butler 3 straight games. And maybe if this wasn't an elimination game, but because they won tonight, now they have an opportunity to even out the series, or at the very worst, they wind up being down 3-1. I'm just wondering, should you expect Butler having to be this type of Jimmy Butler throughout the series, if it at least now triggers the rest of these guys to step up and play to the level that they haven't been able to leading up to this?
It's one of those things. Once you show it, it's like if you're at your job on your regular 40-hour-a-week job, they give you a project and say, hey, Kyle, can you such and such and such and such, and you've never really done it before, and now you've done it. Well, now there's a reasonable expectation that, okay, you can do this type of work. And for me, that's where it's at now. As long as Bam and Dragic are out in this way, or I guess maybe even when they come back, Butler has to be this type of aggressive, because this is what it took to get a win in this NBA Finals. So you can't regress to the mean, so to speak. You have to play at an elite level. Now, the only thing I can say is if those other guys come back, maybe he doesn't have to play 45 minutes. Maybe he can actually take a more reasonable rest, because other high-level guys are out.
A minute and a half, because, in the NBA, a minute and a half is like 7.
But, fam, you know what I mean? This is a very, again, a unique performance. I think somebody just tweeted, this is only the 3rd person in NBA history to do a 40-point triple-double in the NBA Finals. Obviously LeBron has a couple of those. I think it was Larry Bird and now Jimmy Butler. That's rarefied air. And while I don't think it's his natural persona to be this type of aggressive and shooting and trying to do everything from an initial playmaking standpoint, this is what got the W tonight. So you've got to at least try to be that way. You don't expect Anthony Davis to play as bad or to be in much foul trouble throughout the course of the series. But that will limit his opportunities to kind of get into the lane and the shots that he gets in the lane when he's driving as well too. But ultimately, the aggression needs to be there, and I do hope that guys like Hero and Robinson can continue the 3-point assault. Before you jump back in, though, I just kind of want to say this one thing, and it just makes me laugh, because while we all respect LeBron James and what the Lakers have especially done the first 2 games of this series, all the talk about he's staying up late at night and he's studying the tape and blah, 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 and no sleep, and then they come out and give an effort like this, and it's just like, all right, I just prefer not to hear some of that stuff at the end of the day. He doesn't need the extra fluff to pad his proverbial greatness, but all that stuff to me, it's just like, all right, dude. And then when you lay an egg, kind of like the Lakers did tonight, that's when it kind of comes back to bite you.
You know what part of that is? Part of that is people trying to mirror the greatness of what other great people have done, and you and I have been a firm believer of greatness is really reflected upon what you do, not what you do in the shadow of others, right? Mm-hmm. And we hate when we have to make these type of comparisons. LeBron is a man, and as like any man, you evolve. And those who don't choose to evolve, they wind up destroying themselves. They devolve, right? LeBron James has always evolved. Now, he has shown us different sides to him when he chooses to, right? And I would just hope that people who are watching this NBA Finals are trying to look at this just from the perspective of a man who is trying to win an NBA Finals, right? Who has already patted himself to be in the conversations among the greatest to play the game, all right? But if we're looking at this to say from an X's and O's perspective, all of this other stuff to me is just, it's BS, right? Because to your point, you see performances like this and you say to yourself, so what was the meaning of all of that? Like, how is all of that really, in essence, helping what his objective is and his goal is? Maybe that helps him as a person. Doesn't necessarily mean that it helps him as a player and helps him in his ability to do what's necessary to help his team win, which in this particular case is kind of important because you're playing in the NBA Finals, right? So I completely agree with you there. A lot of that is just extra jibber jabber, for the thread. But
And I don't even doubt that he's doing it. It's just
right,
like I really don't want to hear about it. You know
right.
what I mean? Like he's a basketball savant, no doubt about it. But like those things aren't. He doesn't put those out, or he doesn't say those things without meaning. There's a calculated move behind everything he did. So he basically wanted to say, "I'm so locked in right now." That's basically what he's trying to emit with that type of conversation. And again, at the end, it doesn't matter. He's still a great player. He still nearly had a triple double tonight, almost had a quadruple double if you count the turnovers as well. And I just don't think he needs that extra motivation, so to speak. And AD, as the running mate, as much heap and praise as we were talking and giving him and talking about he's in the challenge about the Finals MVP.
Right. Well, at some particular point, he's gonna burn out. He's gonna flame out. I mean, you've seen it. There has not been a time where you're watching AD, and this is part of the reason why we watch AD. It's part of the reason why we made the comments that we made leading up to the NBA Finals. And what we were previewing and saying what it may take in order for the Lakers to actually win this one, right? Mm-hmm. I am not saying that it's going to come down to Anthony Davis winning it, but I will say that the Lakers are not helping themselves if Anthony Davis now finds it to be this time where he runs into a slump, where he struggles. And then you couple that with, your role players not being able to step up. Now, the good part is that we did see Markieff Morris, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Kyle Kuzma. Even in this loss, they stepped up and in essence really gave the Lakers an opportunity. They gave them a shot. The problem is if you're Frank Vogel, how much do you rely on that? How much do you put emphasis on that specifically? Because there's a reason why you're up 2-0 in this series. He's not tried to overdo it. He's not tried to overthink it. He's been able to put together the rosters on the floor that's been effective for him. And we've talked about this. Any slippage from the Miami Heat gives the Lakers new life. So this could be one of those, hey, you know what? He had a bad game. And probably better to do it while you're up 2-0 than to be down 0-2, right? Going into this game 3 if you're Anthony Davis.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't think we'll see Davis play this poorly or be in that level of foul trouble again. I'd be shocked. It's just, it's the Lakers. He's an elite player. I just think this is kind of a one-time thing. And credit Miami for not blowing this opportunity because they could have gave in when the Lakers made their many runs and Morris was hitting back-to-back threes and things of that nature. And, it could have gone a different way, but they had a response to everything. But if you're the Lakers, you are concerned about the lack of effort from Danny Green and KCP. I think KCP was still relatively competitive defensively. He was just kind of overmatched. But Green, on the other hand, there were times I saw him like on screens. He just was like slow motion, really not really trying to get over and just said, all right, whatever, let the chips fall where they may. And I think he's a pro's pro. Obviously, he's a multi-time champion. And I think he'll come back and be better, the next game as well, too. But it's weird to see the Lakers waste 38 points rather from Morris and Kuzma off the bench. And those guys were immense, keeping them in this thing when nobody else could actually hit a shot. So, the Lakers' third star was the bench tonight because AD definitely wasn't able to give them anything as the second guy.
You bring up so many excellent points, but the last point that you brought up about the Lakers' number 3 star was the Lakers bench, right? And in essence was actually their number 2 star tonight specifically. You're right. So, a couple of things that really stood out to me, and I think maybe it's just an interesting observation that I'm making. I think because of the activity that the Heat showed tonight, and what I mean by activity was constant movement without the ball. I had said that was going to be one of the keys, that they cannot be sitting around watching because then it turns into an isolation game. And you don't help Jimmy Butler if you're asking him to completely play isolation basketball and make shots for you. His involvement is him being aggressive, but that aggressiveness can only be complemented by the rest of the guys on the floor moving around, moving without the basketball. And I do think that part of that led to the Lakers not kind of being on their A game defensively. With all that constant movement, I think it may have affected a few of these guys shooting the ball during certain points of the game. It's not to say that they completely tired them out or anything like that. I'm just saying that if you are known to be a defensive kind of guy, which Danny Green has been, if you're known to be a defensive kind of guy, which Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was, and remember, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was struggling in the beginning of this game. He didn't turn it on until the second half. A lot of these guys, when they know that the reason why you're out there is because you're supposed to be locking down shooters, and you can't even do that effectively, not for them shooting, but because they're taking the ball to the hole on you and blowing past you, leaving Anthony Davis vulnerable to pick up ticky-tack fouls, or Dwight Howard picking up ticky-tack fouls, or LeBron James picking up ticky-tack fouls. Then you start thinking about how precious your time on the floor is really going to be, because you're now forcing yourself to say, I've got to make a shot. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. And listen, that's what you're supposed to do. You know, basketball is not just about dribbling the basketball back up and down. It is a thinking man's game to an extent. And in this particular situation, you got guys that are struggling who can't play who can't execute the way that they would normally execute because they rely on what they do best defensively, wind up struggling to do offensively. And it usually takes something in the second half for them to figure something out. And the Miami Heat took advantage of that.
Well, I'll kind of pseudo go into that, and by taking it even another direction as well. I think the 3-point shooting of the Lakers in general is at an all-time high. And you have to credit Miami's defense for that. You know, the Lakers didn't come into the series wanting to beat the Houston Rockets and shooting 43s a game, 42 more 3-point attempts tonight. And we talked about it last game where, hey, they were able to get offensive rebounds. They're like, yo, F it, let it fly. We have a chance to get a second chance, get offense rebounding, get some second chance points.
The Heat prioritized rebounding. Brady Hawk called it, and we had tweeted about that. Shout outs to our man Brady Hawk from 5 Reasons Sports. He said the Heat put emphasis on rebounding tonight, and you can see the results of what was going on.
This evening, Miami had 5, so you know you only lose by a slim 1 point disadvantage in that aspect, but you just limit the amount of rebounds. Remember, it was I think Davis had 8 offensive rebounds last game or something like that. So he alone was just being a menace to them on that side of the basketball, and I think the Heat really did focus on that side of it. Off the lanes of cutters and got back out to the 3 to make sure that those shots were at least contested, even if the Lakers were able to knock them down. So I think a great game plan from the Heat tonight, small and minor adjustments, but some of it is just the Lakers did not play well as well too. And I have to credit Miami for making sure that they took advantage of this game, because they still could have lost despite how bad the Lakers ended up playing.
You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA, our 2020 NBA Finals. Game 3 post-game wrap-up. The Miami Heat stunned the Los Angeles Lakers 115-104. Lakers lead the series 2-1. Be sure to get at my man Shaw at Shaw Sports NBA. Get at me at GameFaceLead. The show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline. But be sure to check out our previous episodes, www.thebaselinenba.com. A couple more points, Sean, then we'll go ahead and get into our predictions. I had said before that if the Miami Heat had wanted to have an opportunity to be able to win this game, or even, compete in this series, they have got to win the second and third quarter. And tonight, that's exactly what they did. They held the Los Angeles Lakers to 30 points in the second quarter, 26 in the third. Now, prior to this, the Miami Heat was allowing the Los Angeles Lakers to average 36 points per quarter, which to me, you're not giving yourself a chance to win a game. If the Lakers are pretty much dropping 30 on 3 of the 4 quarters that they're playing. And tonight, their defense prevented the Lakers from scoring 30 points, but for the fourth quarter, right? So for the second quarter. So ultimately, this came down to the Miami Heat clamping down, being physical, stepping their defensive effort up, holding down and limiting possessions to the Los Angeles Lakers, aggressively rebounding the basketball better. And to me, these are recipes for them that they can easily carry into the next game to give themselves a shot to probably even the series.
Right. I mean, again, just a consistent effort throughout. And as you alluded to, they didn't obliterate them in those second, third quarters, but they won them. And I think those are important statistics, especially for the way the Heat have played in the first 2 games. And if they can continue to answer the call in the way that they did tonight, as I said, I keep going back to it. I was scared for them. I think it was the Lakers took a 91-90 lead at some point in the fourth or whatever. I was like, oh, I think I think this might be it. But luckily, Miami had a response for pretty much everything the Lakers threw out there this evening. And again, their effort throughout the course of this game and getting points off the bench again from Olynyk, who's he's definitely been their sixth man, the best guy off the bench. I thought maybe Kendrick Nunn would really have a little bit of shake and swag to him coming into especially games 2 and 3. But that really hasn't been the case. It's really been Olynyk has been the guy who's been immense for them. And, we're not seeing a whole lot more else. Even Solomon Hill, only 4 minutes, hit a big three or whatever. But this Miami bench is Olynyk and little else, especially from an offensive side. Iguodala is doing a little bit defensively as well. But I think Miami is in a space now where they feel very comfortable and confident that they can compete with the Lakers. And that's all you need sometimes. That old saying is like, so you're saying there's a chance. Like, they believe there's a chance right now. And I think they know that they can continue to, and they're sorry, and I lost my point a little bit, but the funny thing is they still miss some very makeable shots from Miami as well.
Absolutely.
Harrow and Crowder missed some wide open threes that the Lakers didn't even bother to defend. So this could have been an even easier win. And I think that plays more into their confidence.
And they left points. They left points in the paint, man. I mean, listen. Yeah. I understand that the Miami Heat still want to shoot that 3 ball. And again, they've adopted that. That to me is still their primary, that's their personality as of, right now. And if I'm supposed to, I wouldn't ask them to change it. But they left a ton of points in the paint though, man. I mean, scoring 44 points in the paint to me is 48 points in the paint to me is impressive, if you're the Miami Heat. But they could have easily had 60 through the course of this night. Against the Lakers. I mean, that's how much of a hole the Lakers left in that area and stuff. And I'm just saying, part of that to me is shot selection. Part of that to me is primarily shot selection. But if it's not going to diminish your confidence of you being able to get those shots, to get the shots that you want against the Lakers, then you know what? It's a wash. It's not to me to look at you as a negative for that, but it is something that I would say, let's see what happens going into game 4, because I don't see the Lakers allowing the Miami Heat to get off that easily in the paint. They're going to have to work for it. And to me, that's part of the reason why I'm just like, the more you build confidence scoring in that paint, the more that you start putting question marks on how Frank Vogel wants his defense to attack the Miami Heat.
Yeah, I mean, it ended up being 52 in the paint for Miami. And you alluded to Butler still drove to the lane and could have had a couple layups that he passed back out, I think 2 or 3 more times in this series, in addition to whatever in this game, rather than in addition to a couple bunnies that they may have missed, inside as well. So to me, that's a great thing if you're the Heat, because you realize you still have another level potential that you can get to, especially if your guys can hit some more shots from the outside in the way that they missed tonight. And, Robinson 3 of 10, and then Hero was 2 of 8 or something like that. So those are makeable shots for some of those guys. And I think the Lakers need to be wary. They definitely need to be more careful. But I think a lot of what they're going to put on this game is just Anthony Davis was in foul trouble. And, if he's out there for the majority of the minutes, not having to play timid, that changes the whole complexity and composure for this game for the Lakers. But we'll see. And then obviously the looming issues potentially of Bam and Dragic returning for game 4. Lots of digest, bro.
Right. So Lakers 20 turnovers tonight. Obviously, that's not going to get it done. But let's get right into it, Shaw. Again, impressive effort by the Miami Heat to knock out the Lakers here in game 3 and basically give themselves a chance to possibly even the series in game 4. Do you see that happening? Who wins game 4?
Man, 2 things are at play here for me. The Miami Heat are not better without Dragic and Bam Adebayo. They're not. Just right. Blank. But they found a way to get it done without them tonight. So can they reinstitute them, either one of them, back into the fold where it's complementary in a way that can continue this level of momentum? The issue that I have is I just feel that Lakers turned the ball over so much, and Anthony Davis was in foul trouble, as I keep alluding to. And I can't see those things, a LeBron-led team, happening again to the Lakers. So I think we're going to get a very close and competitive game 4. But I would still give the Lakers the edge to kind of come out on top if they can clean up some of this stuff. But it really can go, in my opinion, either way. I'm not trying to be dodgy about it. I think Miami may have found some stuff, but has the stuff that they found, can that negate the greatness of Anthony Davis and LeBron if they're clicking on all cylinders?
I think it's going to come down to, if you're the Miami Heat, they can clearly replicate what they did. But I just wonder if the Los Angeles Lakers will clean up a lot of what they need to do, which the likelihood is that they will, which then kind of puts us in the space of saying, even with what Miami did tonight, which is damn near perfection for them, given the circumstances, it just wouldn't be enough to beat the Los Angeles Lakers. With that being said, if there's any indication about Bam Adebayo playing in Game 4, I think the Miami Heat have a shot. It's not even about whether or not Bam is going to be able to do, the kind of things that we've seen, Jimmy Butler do this evening. It's a question of his inspiration and his ability to be another body on the floor to at least give you a few minutes of being able to stay on Anthony Davis and force him to be out of rhythm early in the game. If Anthony Davis is just basically like eating all day long against the Miami Heat, if he starts off the first quarter eating on the Miami Heat, it's a wrap, because they're not going to be able to stop Anthony Davis throughout the night. So the key to the Heat is through how they defend and how they frustrate Anthony Davis. And if they do that, they can replicate what they did again. With that being said, it's very difficult for me to see that. And I'm going to have to ride with the idea that the Los Angeles Lakers come back and take Game 4, take a 3-1 series lead on this. Because, again, the only way that I can see them really being able to do that with consistency is they need Adebayo out here. I can't see that they're going to lean on the shoulders of Myers Leonard, Jay Crowder, and Kelly Olynyk one more time to do what they just did here in Game 2 and think that they're going to be successful against the Lakers doing it.
Yeah, I don't. Again, it's put together with duct tape and Elmer's glue, for this win, and they looked pretty.
If it was a situation that we saw this with a little bit more frequency from the Miami Heat, I think we would be more confident in building on that. But again, look how long it took for there to be effectiveness even in the zone that they're playing, right? And unfortunately, you're playing in the NBA Finals. And you don't have the luxury of, every other game figuring out what you can and cannot do with this zone to get the effectiveness of why you're doing what you're doing, right? It's like everything is so truncated.
Yeah, and I'm not, again, Miami did an amazing job, and I'm not taking anything away from them, but the fact remains that Davis played a crap game and was in foul trouble. If they beat this Lakers team where LeBron and AD are still kind of both their normal selves, not even
we'll be having a much different conversation about this. Right?
So I think, I have to see them kind of do it in that way, or if they can find ways to continue to negate AD. And if that happens, then we're talking about a completely different series in general. Shouts to Jay Crowder. While he wasn't amazing, he did take the ball to the basket a couple of times. I think you tweeted that out. So those couple layups, those extra 6 points are massive, I think, even for his confidence, and make sure that they can keep those Laker runs at a minimum. But ultimately, this Miami Heat team is a game. Eric Spoelstra is still an amazing coach, and they've made it a series. And hopefully we'll see a very, very interesting Game 4 with most of the Heat guys back, and then we'll see how the Lakers end up responding.
Absolutely. So once again, everybody, we appreciate you guys for hopping on board with us for a few minutes. As always, get at us at NBA Baseline. We definitely want to hear your thoughts. And we are going to be ready come Tuesday for Game 4 of the NBA Finals between the Miami Heat and the Los Angeles Lakers. Once again, the Miami Heat defeat the Lakers 115-104. The Lakers lead the series 2-1. Be sure to get at us, www.thebaselinenba.com. For The Baseline, Cal Lee, Warren Shaw, we appreciate you guys. Thanks for hopping on board with us this week.